All right, you mouth breathers, let's do it. Let's talk about Stranger Things 4, Volume 2, Episodes 8 and 9, Papa and Piggyback. What a load of shit. Like, I can't believe how massively they dropped the ball on this. I mean, if you've seen my previous review, talking about the first volume, the first part of Season 4 of Stranger Things, I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. Couldn't wait to see where it went next. And they just like, I just couldn't believe it. It's one of the biggest drop-offs in quality I think I've seen in a show, in a movie. Like, that was a really big disappointment, and hopefully most of you have been watching me long enough to completely detect the deadpan sarcasm in my voice and mannerisms when I say this, because of course that is the complete opposite of the truth. This was an incredible finale to the show, and I was just completely blown away, to be honest with you, by how well they brought together all those storylines, particularly in that ninth episode where you got Hopper and Joyce and Warren Walker. What's his name? What? I'm gonna get caught up on this now. Daryl? No, Darren? I don't know. You know the guy. You know what I'm talking about. With the flamethrower. It's very cool. You got those guys in Russia. You got like the kids and the young adults in the Vecna house. And then you got like Eddie and you got Dust in there to kind of to play the distraction game inside the Upside Down. And then you've got Eleven and Mike and Will and Jonathan and the pizza boy, and they're all trying to like, get her into that deprivation. Like, it's just, oh my god, it was just so brilliantly done. The pacing was beautiful. The way that it brought the story up and down and then just never let up. It's like probably certifiably the longest, most extravagant third act to a cinematic story ever, because most films and shows that give you this kind of a climax to a kind of action adventure story, that climax is like 45 minutes at the absolute max. This was like 2 hours, and well, maybe a little bit less because you had the kind of extended kind of aftermath after everything had got, maybe an hour and 50 minutes. Like, it's outrageous. It's going to be, obviously it's, is it television? It is television, but like, it wasn't aired on a network, but it's got to be one of the longest episodes of TV ever for a drama show like this. But not to discount episode 8, which was also fantastic and kind of really brought us to seemingly a conclusion to the Papa storyline. That was great stuff. Like the interactions between Eleven and Dr. Brenner, especially in that kind of, when they were alone, in kind of the tank like chamber silo thing. Incredible performance from Millie Bobby Brown. It's specifically like the way she was calling him a monster and stuff. And I feel like watching it again, actually. I haven't really done that for any of the seasons, but I want to watch like 8 and 9 again. And for me and Connie, we treated it like a movie night. So our kind of viewing schedules are very tight. And our time together lately is very tight in terms of like work and stuff. We get like 2-hour windows every evening, which, it's nice we get that every evening, but to fit a movie in, it would have to be the movie and nothing else. So often we just don't. We watch an episode of TV or something. With Stranger Things, it just wasn't possible to binge watch it, so it took us about a week to do the first volume. But with 8 and 9, we wanted to just watch the whole thing, not get spoiled. So it was Friday, July 1st, 2022. We got in, we ordered a big pizza. I had a big, large pepperoni passion, which is like double pepperoni, extra mozzarella. I had some jalapeno peppers thrown in, nice and spicy, the stuffed crust. It was beautiful. It was a proper movie night. It was a 7 samurais worth of Stranger Things, and I was so excited to get into it, and it was incredible. I'm not going to go into spoilers will be abound, but I'm not going to like deep dive dissect this. Everyone's talking about it anyway. That's one thing I could touch on at this point in time, is that at this part of the video, I guess. Sorry, that just felt like a really weird kind of like politician thing to say. At this point in time, I'd like to discuss this issue regarding to the the Netflix show, it just felt really weird, but it came out of my mouth, so there you go. Anyway, the someone was talking online about, and I was replying to them about how in certain like shows you get like the staggered weekly releases, and then Stranger Things and so on Netflix model, it just gets all dumped, and then like the cultural conversation is very short. And I kind of argued against that. I think that with Stranger Things, it has such an impact, and they kind of just funnel it all into this one dump. And you go back to like the first season of Stranger Things. I remember when that came out, and there was no fanfare, no anticipation. It quietly dropped and very quickly picked up traction, and then everyone was talking about it and making fan art. And I'm like, why is this Stranger Things thing? So we checked it out. We loved it. It became a phenomenon. Everyone was talking about it. Everyone was clamoring for a season 2 announcement. I remember those days where people were like, are there going to be a season 2? Before the days of knowing that it was a foregone conclusion. Of course they were going to do another season. Until now, of course, they've announced that season 5 is the final season of this story and version of Stranger Things. A spin-off is also in the works. But yeah, so like that first season, it was like, and part of it was like, it wasn't like, oh, this new show just came out, Stranger Things, check out the first episode. Oh, that's interesting. But it was like, no, it's like all out. You can watch all of it. And then people are getting hooked and watching it and binge watching it. And then suddenly it's this explosion of like, here's this great new show and you can watch all of it at once. Or like, there's no like waiting a week. You can watch it, one day, or whatever kind of form and schedule that you choose. And that became the big kind of hype. And so, I remember, season 2, season 3, people staying up all night because they want to watch all of it at once and not get spoiled. And it does kind of hyper-focus this massive event of the show coming out, and everyone gets to see everything. There's an appeal to that, and it kind of maximizes the cultural footprint at a certain point in time. But I also agree that with a weekly releasing, especially with a show like this, you get the theorizing, like what does that mean? What was that a clue to something else? And I would have liked to have seen that, because then I wouldn't have got spoiled anything, but also it would have lasted a bit longer. We could have savored Stranger Things for a little bit more, like a steak than well, not to compare it to a steak with a McDonald's burger or something, because that would imply that the quality isn't very good. The quality is great. It's just I can't think of a good analogy, and I'm not going to try and conjure one up. But I think you get what I'm kind of getting at, and also just the divide between the line, even between television and film, is just blurring so much over the past few years. And with something like this, where it's like it's a 2-hour, 20-minute final episode, that's a movie. It doesn't feel like less of a movie because everything it feels movie quality in terms of the way it's shot, the way that it sounds, the way that it feels, the acting, not to kind of slander television or anything, but that's another thing that's been changing over the past like 10, 15 years, is that maybe even a bit longer, where TV is becoming almost like the place to be for the really great actors, because you get more time to dive into these characters and stuff than a 2-hour movie. But it just feels like the quality is more level than it's ever been before, and it really is just a distinction of one is in episode chunks, one is not. And and people say, well, TV is written differently, and I guess it is to a degree, but this really did feel like one big massive, well, it's a series of movies and a massive movie at the same time. But and I have this argument and this discussion, this debate about calling TV shows movies, or episodes of TV shows movies. And full disclosure, like, I'm gonna be that cunt who at the end of this year is gonna list Piggyback as one of the best films of the year, because it just was. Like, it was a movie. It just was. It felt like a proper event, and at the same time it didn't feel anywhere near as long as it was, which I think is the genius of the pacing of this show, but also the brilliance of the writing in terms of the character development, because you care so much about these characters, you will follow them on an obscenely long third act finale and never really feel like you're bored, and then everything else is executed so like pitch perfectly that it doesn't feel like you're watching a 2-hour, 20-minute episode of TV. And in the case of watching 8 or 9 back to back, 3 hours, and it was even more, probably 3 hours and 40 minutes maybe. I think the eighth episode was like an hour and 15, 20 minutes. Either way, very long stuff. Now, volume 2, I'm not gonna like go into all the beats and the kind of, but the eighth one was really like, I mean, that scene with 11 pulling that helicopter out of the fucking sky, like holy shit, and I wasn't expecting Brenner to die there, and I was really intrigued. And I read an interview with Matthew Modine, who plays him, and he said that, well, I don't want to say anything, I don't know anything, but like, I played that scene as if it was my last. Like, it felt really sad because it might be the last time I get to kind of hang out with Millie Bobby Brown, because he said that in a lot of jobs you work with actors, you have a close friendship in some cases, but after the show, after the movie, you never really see him again. And so he felt really sad in that moment because it felt like he might not get to work with her again, and by extension even see her again perhaps, for an extended period of time, like you would making a show or a movie. So for him, he felt like that was the end. And I think he asked them, like, so is Brenner dead? And they're like, Brenner ceases to exist, or something. They kind of had a cryptic way of saying it. So I think we will probably see him in a flashback again. But he has Matthew Modine has a theory that he might be 000 because of a few different things, which are quite interesting. But we'll leave the theorizing for maybe another video, or not at all, and kind of try and focus more on the show. So 11 kind of coming out of the revelation of who Vecna is, and knowing that it's Creel, and fighting against Brenner. And then we have, I forget the guy's name, but Paul Reiser's character. I love the introduction of Paul Reiser coming in, working alongside Brenner, because now you have kind of the kind of the balance. You're kind of the devil and the angel on the shoulder of 11 in a way. And it was nice to see someone push back against Brenner, and that just made for an interesting dynamic, rather than just having Brenner kind of being the overlord of the program and kind of controlling 11 again. That was good. And the idea that she had choice, but she didn't really. And then kind of the big climax as far as, Mike and Will turning up in the Surfer Boy, the Surfer Pizza, whatever it was, the van, and then, kind of taking 11 off and stuff. So, and I'm trying to think, like, what was I guess in the eighth episode, everything is just continuing to progress. I think in the eighth episode, the Hawkins group are getting ready for that kind of the showdown. I think they're kind of gathering the weapons and stuff. I think so. I can't remember. It feels like one big episode, apart from the fact that 8 distinctively had the culmination of the Nina kind of California storyline with Brenner. And I really loved that last exchange with Brenner and 11, where he's like basically like asking her, like begging almost, to just like acknowledge that I'm sorry, or I forget exactly what he said, but he wanted her to basically make him feel better about what he'd done, and she just needed to like acknowledge him. And I think she just like holds his hand or something and just puts it down, like, like, I'm not going to scream at you, I'm not going to be angry at you, but you're not having that level of mercy from me. You've made your bed, you're going to lie in it, and she leaves him. I really like that. So, piggyback, it's really about 11 trying to get back to Hawkins as soon as possible so she can kind of help Max, because Max is, the whole plan is for Max to kind of be the bait for Vecna, to draw Vecna out, and they can try and kind of take him out in the Upside Down, while Max lures him in the real world, because he's kind of going into that kind of the state where he's kind of like all the kind of the, what would you call them? I was gonna say the eels, but no, the tentacles, or like the, like the wires, the kind of I don't know, I can't think of the word. It's like the organic tissue. I don't know, the things that kind of plug into him, and he's kind of like charging almost, but goes into this trance, and then he kind of grabs people in the real world. I liked how we had, for me it felt like this big amalgamation, and not in a bad way, of like Nightmare on Elm Street and like Inception, when Max starts going like into memories within memories, and kind of like protecting herself within a nice memory. Like, that was really interesting stuff. And she goes into these different levels and layers, and then like Lucas is there to kind of try and, you know, help her out and kind of protect her and stuff. Then that jock prick turns up, and I just love the stress and everything that's just kept mounting and mounting. And then Eleven's like, I can piggyback. I'm here in California, but give me like a sensory deprivation tank and I can hop over and protect Max from here. And so, you know, it's just everything's building, everything's kind of just the momentum. And then, you know, we get the Metallica needle drop, as the kids say, which I really popped for that. I was like, oh yeah, that's really like when, you know, Eddie's playing Master of Puppets and like Dustin's like, you know, nodding his head long. And I thought that's a really fucking cool scene. And then as the lyrics started, I was like, oh yeah, Master of Puppets. And then I just popped all over again because I thought like that's a really funny, fitting kind of like symbolism that is kind of like, it's both a funny joke, but also really fitting and badass at the same time. And, you know, it was a great moment for Eddie, who like, the turnaround on Eddie is insane. People were talking about how annoying he was when Volume 1 came out. Volume 2, he's like Gandhi. Like, everyone and their dog is obsessed with Eddie and in love with Eddie and just like so enamored with him after that episode. And yeah, it was a very moving, kind of heroic arc for the character. This guy who, you know, had never really done anything really that bad or wrong, and just based on a witch hunt because of the, you know, the way that he likes to express himself, and the kind of negative connotations of people who are into heavy metal music, that kind of thing. And you know, he just is vilified, and no one in the town liked him, and yet he gave his life to save them. Like that it doesn't get really much more heroic and selfless than that. And he wanted to kind of, I guess, for once, kind of feel like he'd really done the right. It was a very touching, you know, moment when he died, I think. But the Metallica bit, that was really fucking cool. Two funny things. Someone was like, "Wow, Eddie really learned that song quick," because the timeline of the story and Master of Puppets coming out was like a few weeks. But it's permissible that Eddie would have been well onto that. You know, I'm sure he was a big fan of Ride the Lightning, and you know, got learning the chords and the solos straight away when Master of Puppets came out in 1986. And then someone else said, like, the fact that Eddie never lived to see the Black Album released feels like a personal attack on my emotions. I was like, oh yeah, it's a shame you didn't get to see the Black Album. That's, you know, but yeah, that's neither here nor there. Now let's talk about Will, because Will is such an interesting character to me. In like the first season, it's all about Will Byers, you know, and he's barely in the show. Season 2, we get him back, and now Noah, is it Schnapp? He gets to really show his chops, and he was fantastic in that second season where it was still affecting him, the Upside Down. He was connected to it, and he was so great. I don't remember much of what he did in season 3. And in season 4, similarly, he's kind of sidelined a little bit with an incredible bowl cut haircut, which is kind of, you know, been maybe fairly kind of joked about, but I think he kind of rocks it pretty. I think if anyone's going to wear it, it kind of suited him more than the others, I think. But, you know, either way, you kind of forget about the bowl cut when his performance is so great. And in the first volume, he isn't really... There's kind of snippets of what's going on with him, the drawing and, you know, a little bit of that kind of, you know, almost a sibling relationship with Eleven, but also his kind of feeling spurned. Is spurned even a word? Feeling left out. Spurn. Why is spurn in my spurn? Is spurned a word? I don't know. But anyway, if it is, it is. If it isn't, there's a new word for you. I think it is. But wait, if it's shunned, I think shunned is what it is, not spurned. Spurn? No, shunned. He's feeling, but maybe it is. I don't know. Okay, I'll leave it there. He's feeling shunned when Mike turns up and, you know, then visits, and he doesn't feel like his friend's giving him enough attention, and there's something going on with Will. And in 8 and 9, we get to see why, and I think it was kind of hinted at and theorized about in season 2 that he might be gay. And again, in the first volume of Stranger Things 4, but I think it was either the creators or one of the actors was saying that, I think it might even be Noah Schnapp himself who said after the first volume came out that, you know, it doesn't matter if he's gay or not. It's whatever the audience wants to think. If they want him to be straight, then he's straight, you know, that kind of thing. And that just feels really Fence City to me. I mean, obviously Robin is a gay character in the show, but it felt like they were maybe trying to, you know, sit on the fence and kind of just tiptoe around it. But after seeing episode 8 and 9, it's very clear, very clear that Will is in love with his best friend Mike, and it's a very touching and kind of tragic storyline, because you know that Mike isn't gay and that he's in love with 11 and he's straight, and and it just makes sense. I read someone say like, why did he have to be in love with Mike? Like it's just weird, and it's like it's not. It's the opposite of weird. If you if you were gay, and your same sex best friend, was your best friend for a reason, and especially if you're attracted, why wouldn't you? I think for your partner to be your best friend is like the best possible outcome in kind of a relationship, right? So of course he loves him, as a friend, but obviously there's something more there because he's gay, and he loves Mike, like people, they have that connection, and I just thought it was really sweet but kind of sad, because obviously Mike is not going to reciprocate that, and when he's telling him, here's the painting that 11 asked me to make, and you're the heart of the group, Mike, you always have been. He's talking to him through the guise of L, and I thought that was really a clever way to write it, and the way he looks away and he's kind of in tears. Brilliant, beautiful performance by Noah. And then you see kind of Jonathan kind of clocking it and kind of realizing what's going on, because he's his brother. And that's something that I feel like we missed in season 3, was that really strong, touching, brotherly relationship between Jonathan and Will, which is a huge part of the first season and a really important part of the second season once he gets his brother back. And I just, as someone who has a younger brothers, I found it really affecting in those first 2 seasons. And yeah, I have an older brother who died when he was very young, so I've always wondered what it would be like if my brother had survived and lived, to have that older brother figure. So the Will Jonathan thing really, really gets me, and in this season, right at the end, we get that moment between them when he basically tells Will, like, I don't care, like, I love you no matter what. He could feel what it was. He's his brother. And I'm getting emotional thinking about it, because Will's reaction is just like, it means so much to him to hear that. And it means so much to him that Jonathan didn't like outright say it, because he's obviously still struggling with it. And I think that's massive for like young people who are going to, this is a show that's massively popular, and there's going to be so many teenagers, maybe a bit too young, seeing some of the dark stuff in the show, watching that scene. And that's going to be really big for them. That's going to make a lot of people feel like they can now be honest with their family, or at least maybe think about being honest with their family, and it might make them feel better about themselves, that they feel a bit different, and you can say, well, it's 2022. I get that, but especially in the context of this show in the 1980s, much different, so it makes so much more sense why Will is, really, really, he's not telling anyone, but obviously it's not even just the fact that he's gay, it's the fact that he's in love with his best friend, and it's awkward, and even when that's, and I don't know if I've talked about it in the first part of when I did the video for volume 1, but I feel really bad for Finn Wolfhard, who plays Mike, because he's a good actor. He didn't get a lot to work with Mike this season, which I think is fine, because Mike was a big part of earlier sections of the story so far, but it's like he didn't progress acting wise, and all the other kids are just leaving him in the fucking dust. Noah is just incredible. Sadie Sink, who plays Max, is fantastic. Caleb, I think, is the actor who plays Lucas. Really, really shone in the 9th episode. The actor who plays Dustin, Gayton, I think is his name, he's always great. He's just like, I don't know whether he's just like an amazing actor, or just like he is that guy, and he's just so perfectly suited to the show. And maybe he won't even have a good career outside of that, because that's all he can do. But for this show, he's perfect. But no, but he is great, because of the emotion that he conveys. He's such a warm character. Like, you just want to give him a hug. You just want him to be your friend. You want him to passionately defend you, verbally and physically. Because he's just that guy, that kind of lovable guy. But when it comes to the serious emotional moments, especially with Eddie in this season, he really nails it. And that conversation he had with Eddie's uncle was really great and really sad. And but and then Millie Bobby Brown just is in another league as far as I'm concerned. Like her before, and I can't remember what it was, but I saw her, and it was some movie. It wasn't that Sherlock Holmes one because I haven't seen that yet. Was it King Kong or was it one of the Godzilla? I think maybe she's in both of them, like Godzilla, the King of the Monsters, and King Kong versus. There's two King Kong Godzilla movies, and she's in both of them, I think. Yeah, and it was just like, like I was like, oh, this is gonna be really good. I was like, I think it's just like in that kind of movie, it's not really about the acting. Well, it is and it isn't, I think, and she didn't have much to work with. I thought, oh well, maybe it's a one trick one. No, anytime a Stranger Things season rolls around, it's like, oh shit, she's great. Like, she is unbelievable, and she was next level in this season. So poor Finn Wolfhard, he's just being outclassed in every direction that he's like standing in, and it's kind of like, I feel bad for the kid, but he did do well in that scene when he's kind of like shouting to Elle like, "I love you." Like, it wasn't brilliant, but it was good, But the whole reason I thought that was because, he's there and he's like, 11, I love you, and I should say it more, and I'm sorry that I don't, and you get Will there kind of encouraging Mike, knowing that this is kind of breaking his heart a bit, but that's how good of a soul Will has, and that to me is just I'm really invested in how they pay that storyline off, because for me there's really only two ways you go about it. One is you show that Will has come to terms with the fact that him and Mike are not really going to be, nothing's going to happen there, and he has to just accept the fact that they have to keep that distance, or he has to keep that distance from Mike emotionally, and that it's sad, but he has to kind of put that part of his feelings away forever, which is very sad, but it's obviously a necessary thing, and it would be, I guess, his first real heartache and heartbreak in his life. Or you go the route of him telling Mike that he's in love with him, and Mike kind of accepts it, which would be a beautiful moment, but I don't think it would be true to the character of Mike, who I still don't think would be anywhere near as emotionally intelligent to grapple with that situation in any kind of adult manner. And it made me think of the film Spencer, where I think it's a fictionalized story, but you see Diana, Princess Diana, with one of her helpers, played by the brilliant actress whose name I've completely forgotten. She's fantastic. She was in The Shape of Water, should have won the Oscar, even though it was a mute performance. Sally Jenkins? Shit, I'm getting really bad with names. I can't remember. Spurned, Shunned, Sally. Is it Sally Jenkins? I don't know. I'm gonna have to look that up. And if it's wrong, I'm gonna edit myself and be very mad. Sally Hawkins. That's what it is. Pretty sure it's Sally Hawkins. And anyways, big digression. And there's a point in the movie where Diana and this woman, they're sat on a beach together, and she just turns to Diana and she's just like, paraphrasing, it's been a while since I saw the movie, she's just like, I'm in love with you. Like, I'm just completely in love with you. It is what it is. And Diana just looks at it, and they just both kind of smile and laugh, and it's just it's a nice, it's a recognition of okay, I've told you, I'm in love with you. I know this is going to happen. You know this is going to happen, but that's how I feel about you, and that's that. I've said my bit, and it's just a really sweet. You don't need any more said, and they're both adults, obviously. So, but I feel like with Mike and Will, that wouldn't go down as well. So I think it's going to be more of an internal acceptance on Will's part. But I also think maybe it would be good for Will to tell Mike that he's gay. That would be a really big step. Anyway, but I could do a whole video talking about what I'd like to see in the 5th season. The Vecna 11 showdown, even Vecna facing down some of these other characters like Max, who successfully kind of keeps him at bay with her good. We get to see a cameo from Billy, which is nice, but the whole 11 Vecna stuff was really epic. And when we find his backstory of what happened once she sent him into the Upside Down and the Mind Flayer creature, and I have to say, it worked me into believing that something really bad is going to happen now. A lot of people were theorizing, okay, what's the big death going to be, And for me, I just felt like this ain't the kind of show where they kill off a main character, and I just felt like it wasn't going to happen. It didn't feel like this is the show that does that, and I feel like there's an unnecessary expectation on modern shows based on like the precedent that Game of Thrones set, which is that for a show to be really good, you need to kill off main characters like indiscriminately and like really shock people. Because I saw people on Facebook after this finale came out, and they were like, man, they really need to work on this. Hopefully season 5 can turn this around. No major character deaths at all. Really disappointing. And it's like, well, if you like the characters, why would you want them to die? And I get like you need to show the stakes, and there's people who say that they don't like the show because all the main characters have plot armor, and they're never going to be killed. Maybe I can kind of see that, but it doesn't feel like a story to me that needs that. When I think to like the Amblin stuff that the first season was so very clearly modeled after, no one is like, oh man, the Goonies suck. They didn't kill any of those kids. You know what I mean? Like it needs that happy ending, I think. And I read that the Duffer Brothers pitched the ending of season 5 to the Netflix executives, and they were all crying. And I thought, well, maybe they're going to do some big deaths. I don't know. But for this season, at least, season 4, I didn't feel like they were going to kill, especially not Hopper. Like, he's gone through too much. Definitely not 11, obviously. Mike wasn't going to be there. I felt like none of them were on and especially with Max. With Max, you feel like because of what happened earlier on in the season that they weren't going to go back to her again, but they did. And the way that they built that up, and, her eyes start bleeding, the limbs start snapping, I'm like, oh my God. I thought, okay, well, she's going to be all right, like, broken limbs, but, she'll live. And then, she says, I can't see. And I was like, oh my God, that's going to be the big thing for the next season, that she's blind. And then she died in Lucas's arms, and I couldn't believe it. I was stunned. And then part of me just thought, I still don't buy it, But for that moment, it kind of worked me into believe. It was like a great wrestling match where it's like, well, that guy's never going to win. And then it makes you think like he's going to win for like just those 2 seconds. And it makes you feel like a kid again. That's what I felt with Max. Not that it made me feel like a kid, like, oh my God, this is great, this is going to die. But it tricked me enough that afterwards I was like, fair play. Like, you got me. In that brief moment, you got me. And I loved how 11 was just basically like, nah, I'm not accepting that. And she brought Max back to life. But she couldn't find her inside her mind. So obviously something's happened with Max, and her soul, her spirit may be stuck in the Upside Down. I'm sure that they will cover that extensively in the final season. Like, I kind of feel like we'll see another meeting between Vecna and Max, and there might be a lot of possession hijinks going on and bringing people back from the clutches of Vecna and the Upside Down. Anyway, so the Max stuff was, and Lucas there holding her and like calling out for his sister was brutal kind of heartbreaking stuff. That jock prick getting split in half was super satisfying, and kind of a funny kind of like foreshadowing earlier on in the season when he says to Lucas like, yeah, your first hangover's fine, you feel like you've been split in half. I'm pretty sure that's what he says. I thought that's pretty interesting, dark bit of foreshadowing there. But like it brings you to a point where it feels like 11 has been beaten. And I thought that they played that so, like, the way it built up and the music. And then they brought back Running Up That Hill, which almost felt like a last minute change because the song had blown up so fucking much. But it was still epic. And like you get Hopper like taking up the Demogorgon literally with Conan's sword. Like that is the actual Conan the Barbarian sword from the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. And cutting off the head as the song reaches its climax, and then Nancy's there with the rifle, and it's like a 1-2 punch of like Terminator 2, where she's like, well, she's not cocking it because it's not a shotgun, but she's like shooting Vecna, and Vecna's like going back towards the edge of the attic, like the T-1000 in Terminator 2. Then she shoots it, and he's on fire, and he falls out onto the thing, and then it's the Halloween ending where like they go back and he's gone. It's like the T2 Halloween 1-2 punch of climactic homages, and yes, I really just, it was brilliant. It was such a great climax, and the character stuff was great, the acting was great, visual effects were fantastic, the implications on the larger story were great, and then we had this whole coda sequence, and people were saying it was a bit jarring that it was just like 2 days later, but I like that because you need that for the guys from Russia to get back. You need that for the guys from California to get back like feasibly in time. And then it makes you think for like 2 or 3 minutes, well, what happened? You know, it's a nice bit of dramatic tension thrown at the end there, and then you see that, okay, Max is still alive, and you know things are changing, and you know the everyone's leaving Hawkins because like the Upside Down is leaking out, or something. We don't really know what, because it's you know, it's a bit spurious as to exactly what's happened in terms of a bleed over of those two worlds and dimensions. But there's been, you know, they say it's an earthquake, and obviously that's why people are leaving and stuff. And the wider implications of this like demon dimension have not been disclosed to the public because, well, for obvious reasons, I suppose. And then we get the reunion of basically all the characters at Hopper's old cabin. And I clocked it immediately when Eleven went into her old bedroom and she slammed the door but left it open a few inches. And then Hopper turns up, and the way that she melts, and that reunion between the two of them was just fantastic. And then you see Will getting the bumps on the back of his neck again, and he's like, Vecna ain't done. He's still around. And then that fantastic kind of like epic orchestral version of the main theme as our main characters look out to all the kind of, you know, the looming threat of this final season. And Eleven's there kind of staring daggers at the smoke and the, you know, the kind of the fissures opening up in the, well, not opening up, but they've already been opened, but you know, you see like the areas where it's all kind of smoking up into the sky, and now the Upside Down is you know, very much visible in the real world. Again, to what extent at that point in time, I don't know, but just seeing the kind of the hint of the red and the kind of the lightning strike, it kind of makes you feel like it's all about to just flower out into the real world, and that would be a massive change to the story, which we haven't seen before, which is an actual bleed over of those two dimensions. They've never really crossed paths in that way. It's always been gateways. And I like how they brought that in, like the gates and stuff and things like that. Anyway, so I loved it. I'm sure you can tell. I'm trying to think of there's so many little details and moments that I liked, and Joyce and Hopper getting together, that was really great to see. I'm so happy that happened. And again, I could fill a whole video talking about what I'd like to see in the final season, but in a nutshell, I think the best end game to go with this story is Eleven and Vecna teaming up to take down the Upside Down, because they didn't create it, but they created the portal from our world into that world. And he's been able to he's grown inside that world, and she has a lot of experience with that world. But I have a feeling that she's going to be able to turn Vecna, because they've humanized him so much, to the point where I feel like that's got to come into play. And I like how they kind of retroactively made him kind of the overlord kind of the whole story, because I like that feeling that it's all. And I was so glad that he didn't die, because I thought he's such a cool, and the guy who plays him is great, but like doing it practically, so much better. He's such a menacing character to see on screen, but to know that he was actually a person, it just gives so much more texture. He's not just this mindless kind of monster, you know. But he has been able to, I don't know if he's like controlling the monsters, or like he's been able to use it to, he's been corrupted by them. I just feel like there's something about that's going to come into play where to destroy the Upside Down, if that's what they really end up doing, she's going to need his help to do that. Will we see 8? You know, was it 8, the girl from season 2? People are like, nah, that's a shitty episode. I like that episode, it was alright. Will we see her again? Will we see Brenner again? Paul Reiser's character. I really loved the little beat where Robin got the kind of the talk going with the Molly Ringwald girl that she had the hots for, and you just see Steve looking over, kind of like proud dad. You know, that was kind of funny, and the whole thing with him and Nancy. You know, like they're really teasing that, and people have been saying, well, it's Charlie Heaton who plays Jonathan, got caught with cocaine in an airport a few years ago, so they're punishing him by kind of writing him out of the story with Nancy, because he's in a relationship with the actress who plays Nancy in real life, and now he's just a stoner in this. You know, I don't know if there's any truth to that or not, but I still think that he really shone in that scene with Will at the very end, at the least. And with so many of these characters, there's only so much you can focus on, you know. Anyway, I will leave it there. that was my thoughts. I wanted to make it like a 10-minute video, but it's me, so enjoy. I'm going to go Google that it's actually Sally Hawkins. I think it's Sally Hawkins. And spurned. Is spurned a word or not? That is my question of the day. Thank you for watching. And I will see you next. I was just wondering if there's anything out there. I feel like there's more stuff that I could have talked about and that I missed. Something big that I missed. I don't think there is, though, really. Nothing notable that I'll be truly kicking myself about after I turn off the camera. I don't think that there is. Yeah, we're good. We'll leave it there. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
It's alright by me. Apart from the fact he throws cans of Carlin into a tree. Yeah, he's really cool. Yeah, he's really cool. But he's not quite as cool as you. 'Cause